Music teacher Chuck, his wife Maria, and younger sister Isabel move to Ashland, into a house that realtor Bonnie sells them for half price. Izzy is grieving over his mother's death, seeing her in nightmares. He takes notes on the advice of a therapist and can't fully forgive his brother for leaving him and his mother. One day, Chuck notices rainwater leaking through the roof. Chuck takes some photos and sends them to Bonnie, then goes to his wife's studio to check for leaks there too. His wife, Maria, a fashion designer and YouTube blogger, was broadcasting live at the time, sharing her experiences. And fortunately, her studio was completely dry. Chuck noticed an old mannequin named Martha in the corner, which Maria had taken with her to her new home. He went outside to inspect the house again. There, he ran into his neighbor, Larry, who was surprised that the cottage had even been sold, given that its previous owner had committed suicide. Shocked by this news, Chuck returned to the house and looked at the photos of the leaks again. Noticing a gun in one of the photos, he couldn't figure out where it came from. The next morning, looking out the window, Chuck saw his wife's mannequin standing in the middle of the lawn, which he immediately told his wife. When Larry approached, the man told him it might be a prank by his younger sister, who was still recovering from the recent death of her mother. The neighbor asks how Izzy is doing mentally and warns that in this town, people suffering from depression often commit suicide. He then advises Chuck to go to the library to study the village's history. Lori also invites Chuck to a meeting of the local gardening club. That afternoon, he does indeed go to the library and finds the books he needs. As he's about to leave, Chuck notices a stack of books appearing in the aisle and a crying girl named Ashley sitting nearby. She asks him not to read them and to just leave the village. Concluding the girl is insane, Chuck goes to the librarian's desk. Seeing what he's taken, Molly asks if he's looking for a forest road no one has yet found. Chuck replies that he's not planning to go anywhere, but just wants to study history. He then mentions a crying girl and a stack of books, startling the librarian. Returning home, the man picks up his books and tells his wife that in 1953, street names were changed and maps were redrawn. As she leaves on business, under the watchful gaze of the ghost, the doorbell rings, and Chuck's new student, Olivia, appears on the threshold. The teacher realizes she's new and, to ease the tension, decides to bring her a glass of water. At that moment, a piano begins playing professionally in the room. When Chuck turns around, he sees a frightened Olivia standing in the doorway, saying that a woman is sitting at the piano. The man returns to the hall where no one is present, and the music stops as Olivia runs away in fear. That evening, while Maria is out running errands, Chuck attends a gardening club meeting, where 6 people are discussing a topic that is not usually discussed there. Molly reports that books are starting to appear in the library again, and one of the men remarks that they haven't had a suicide in a while, but it seems a new wave is approaching. Terrence introduces the newcomer to the group and explains that everyone here has suffered from her. Another man says he's tired of his dreams, and the group begins discussing leaving town, to which Terrence insists she'll still be with them. Chuck inquires about who they're talking about and learns they're talking about a certain Helen Foster, who has been harassing their town for years. Larry says they can stop it by finding Forest Road 825, as rumor has it the woman lived there when she committed suicide. However, that address no longer exists. Suddenly, Larry spots someone on the floor above, and the secret meeting of fears disperses. Chuck hears voices and sees Helen laughing, who suddenly turns her head. Isabella's friend Luke comes to see her and tells her the whole truth about the gardening club and the ghosts in their town. For example, people often spot a stack of books in the library, on which one of the townspeople once hanged himself. He also tells her about Helen Foster, whose daughter was constantly bullied at school. The woman tried to stop it, writing countless letters, but to no avail. Then she killed the bully and his family members, then shot herself. Since then, mysterious suicides have been occurring in the town, 1 every year. Finding the house where Helen lived is now impossible, as the old maps were classified by government decree in 1980. At home, Isabel tells her brother that something is wrong with the town and that a girl from her school, Ashley, committed suicide the night before.
Isabel merely remarks that her brother has become so distant from them that his wife didn't even know she existed. The next day, Isabel and Maria visit an art gallery, where she talks about her bipolar disorder. Isabel sees a woman's silhouette appear in one of the paintings, after which it is hastily covered. That night, Isabel wakes up to the bathroom light turning on by itself. She turns it off, but after a while, the light comes on again. Isabel unscrews the light bulb, but as soon as she lays it back down, the same thing happens again. Soon, terrifying hands and a head emerge from behind the door. Waking up in the morning, the girl decides it was just a dream, but the light bulb she placed next to her before bed suggests otherwise. Isabel shares her nightmare with the Hatch and says she wants to find the forest road, but the guy immediately dissuades her, hinting that those who tried to do so committed suicide. At that moment, Chuck calls the girl, asking her to come home immediately. Isabel notices that Maria is very scared. That afternoon, during a live broadcast, the mannequin behind her began to move. A friend watching the broadcast urged Maria to leave the house immediately, but the woman left the room to show off a dress. When she returned to the camera, she was horrified to see that Marta had disappeared, only to find her in Izzy's room. And when she began to move, the woman fled in terror. Upon Chuck's return home, they burned the strange doll together. Now the man asks if his wife is taking her medication. To which she responds, offended, that many people saw Martha come back to life during the stream. Chuck then asks his sister, who has returned, to pack her things and move to campus. Luke appears to his friend and, looking at a photo of Izzy's mother, says she opened the door for him. The shocked girl then reveals that her mother died in a car accident several months ago. At that moment, something falls in the basement, and the boy runs downstairs. The girl hears first her mother's call, and then her strange laughter. Isabel follows the voice, pushing Maria away when she tries to stop her. She hears her mother accuse her of what she did to her, implying that Izzy was driving at the time of the accident. However, when both girls see Helen, they run away in terror. Izzy locks himself in his room and hears Maria screaming, while Helen attacks. Soon, Maria comes in to see Izzy, who notices her nose is bleeding. Chuck returns, putting his wife to bed, but after he leaves, she suddenly opens her eyes. At this point, Luke returns and explains that he's figured out how some people managed to find the forest road. After redrawing the maps, the city council forgot about the electrical plan, which would lead to House 825 on the forest road. However, when Chuck and Izzy decided to check this out, a realtor showed up at the door, hoping to book Maria for her commercial. The man refuses Bonnie, but a prettier Maria suddenly comes downstairs and agrees, then asks her husband to go look for the forest road, which she suddenly knows about. Asking Luke to stay with Maria, Chuck and Isabella set off to find the address and soon find themselves at an abandoned house. Meanwhile, Maria looks strangely at Luke, and then begins talking on camera about the daughter she never had, making the story increasingly similar to what happened to Helen's daughter, ending with the girl deciding to take her own life due to the endless bullying of the servants. Meanwhile, in an abandoned house, Chuck finds a box of letters addressed to the parents of the main bully and learns that the house at 825, Forest Road belonged to them. Helen's Mary then screams deafeningly and, transforming into Helen, begins laughing madly. The ghost kills Bonnie and her cameraman, then gets to Luke. Meanwhile, a hand appears on Isabel's shoulder, and when Chuck rushes to her aid, an unknown force pulls them both into the old room. So ends the story. What do you think? I look forward to your comments and feedback on the film, and I also count on your likes and subscriptions if you enjoy what we do.